All right, we're about to get started. Good evening and welcome to the Tuesday, September 8th regular meeting of the Stafford County School Board. We are beginning a little bit late as we ran over with our work session related to growth and the capital improvement program. So I was going to start on my left with Dr. Chase. I would have each board member introduce themselves as our roll call.
Sarah Chase, the Falmouth District.
Elizabeth Warner, Griffiths Widewater District.
Holly Hazard, Hartwood District.
Pamela Young, the Garrisonville District.
Irene Hollerback, Aquia District.
Susan Randall, George Washington District.
Tricia Healy, Rock Hill District.
All members are in attendance this evening. Moving on to our next agenda item, approval of the agenda. Is there a
Motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
Is there an
Sorry.
amendment?
Yeah, I had a proposed amendment. Is
Sure,
that-
go ahead.
yeah. So I would like to approve the agenda, but with the amendment that we move information items 1101, 1102, 1103 up for action, and that would make them 1003, 1004, 1005. Simply, they're already budgeted. They're, just in terms of expediting the process, having them for action just will save us a step later in the meeting.
Second.
Is there any discussion?
I have no objection to that. As
All
the
right.
motion maker.
All right, so with the amendment as brought forth by Dr. Chase, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Next, we're going to move on to our recognitions regarding the Stafford Education Foundation's Innovative Teaching Grant recipients. I'd like to happily bring forward Ms. Johnson for our presentation. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Good evening, Madam Chair, school board members, Dr. Kisner. The Stafford Education Foundation thanks you for this opportunity to recognize the recipients of our Innovative Teaching Grant. We thank all the Stafford County Public School staff who helped make this happen. First, we would like to thank this board for your support of the foundation, especially Chairwoman Hazard for her participation. We thank Emily Byers for her consistent support, along with the Office of Strategic Communication and Community Engagement. And thank you to Dr. Kisner. Without his support and guidance, we would not be able to exist as a support mechanism for Stafford County Public Schools. This has been a challenging year, as you well know. We had so many innovative teaching projects to review, but we did have limits to consider. After the committee reviewed all of the applications, there were 11 submissions that rose to the top. In the top 11 are awardees from early childhood education, elementary, middle, and high schools. We realized that some of these projects may not be able to come to fruition based on the revised school schedule. Ms. Byers reached out to each candidate to ask if they would be able to deploy their program under the revised schedule. Some could, unfortunately, some could not. It was determined by the board that those who were able to run their project would be funded for this school year, and for those who could not, would be given first consideration for the following year. This year's recipients have been notified that their submission would be funded. So, congratulations to Benjamin Forbes, Brook Point High School, plethora of physics experiments, which I found fascinating that you can make physics that awesome. Which one am I clicking? Which one? This one? Okay, good. Lee Miller, also from Brook Point High School, The Art of Citizenship, Promoting Community Through Inspired Creation. Lisa Arthur and Alyssa Schmeidel, Dixon Smith Middle School, Collaboration and Coaching. Britta Shaver, T. Benton Gale Middle School, Changing the World, One Book at a Time. Bridget Miller, Hampton Oaks Elementary School, Illuminating Learning. Laura Hall, Amanda Fair, and Katie Garrison, Margaret Brent Elementary School. Seeing is Believing, Providing Immersive Experiences in Virtual Reality. I think that's one I'm definitely going to go see and see how that one works out. Amanda Capel and Brianna Smith, Breanne Smith, Margaret Brent Elementary School, Story Walk. Jennifer Clemenson, Deborah Kenny, and Amy Filizzetti, North Star Early Childhood Education Center, growing plants indoors with a tower garden. Joan Baker and Amanda Black, North Star Early Childhood Education Center, Learn With Me, Family Activity Backpacks. Melinda Riker and Elizabeth Parson, Rock Hill Elementary School, It's All About the Why, Making Learning Meaningful. Bryce Barnes, Amy Lilly, Rebecca Sidebotham, and Jennifer Labor from Winding Creek Elementary School, Winding Creek Podcasting Club. Those are our recipients this year. We would like to thank all the teachers and teacher groups for their creativity and dedication to the students in Stafford County Public Schools, and a special thank you to one of our new board members, Shana Amaya, for diving into the fray and serving on the Grant Review Committee, and of course, the guidance of our chair, Mrs. Kathy Yablonsky. Thank you. There were far more that deserved it, but we're hoping them to resubmit next year.
Thank you so much, Ms. Johnson, for coming and telling us all about the creativity that we know is going on in our schools, and thanks to the Stafford Education Foundation for doing this, investing additional dollars in our teachers. So thank you so much. Next is our proclamation to designate September 13 to 19 as Arts and Education Week. I am going to take this one since the Fine Arts Committee is near and dear to my heart. And again, we hope that people will start to submit for our advisory committees this year. Little plug there too. Whereas arts education comprising a rich array of disciplines including dance, media arts, music, theater, visual arts, and more is a well-rounded subject and an essential element of a complete and well-rounded education for all students. And whereas arts education enables students to develop critical thinking and problem-solving skills, imagination and creativity, discipline and collaboration, alternative ways to communicate and express feelings and ideas, and cross-cultural understanding, which supports academic success across the curriculum. And whereas arts education contributes to increased attendance and graduation rates and prepares students for college, career, and citizenship readiness. And whereas arts education contributes to personal growth outside of the classroom, including increasing a student's likelihood to participate in civic life, volunteerism, altruism, and community engagement. And whereas to succeed in today's economy, students must masterfully develop traits that business leaders demand in a 21st century workforce. And whereas the School Board of Stafford County is charged with the education and development of well-rounded students, now therefore be it proclaimed that the School Board of Stafford County hereby supports the designation of September 13 to 19, 2020 as Arts and Education Week in Stafford County Public Schools, and calls on all employees and families to observe the week with appropriate activities. I'd just like to make a shout out to all of our arts and everyone in the areas of arts that are doing so much right now in this more challenging time. And I really thank you all for all that you're doing to make sure that this component of education does not get left behind. So next on our agenda are our staff reports, financial updates for FY 20 and 21. I'm sure that will be Mr. Vollmer.
Good evening again. I wanted to, it's kind of two presentations into one. At first, we're going to go over the FY 20 year-end financial update, and then we're going to kind of roll into our FY 21, just some of the revenue impacts that we're looking at the beginning of this year. So first, for FY 20, I just wanted to recap a little bit of what we, when we last met and discussed about FY 20. We met, kind of gave updates to the board several times in May and June. Our state revenues were fluctuating on probably a weekly basis. There were times that we were projecting to be several $1 million under budget. Times were, at the most recent one in June, just about $1.5 million. So I'm not going to go through each one of these line items because it's summarized here in a couple. Well, this is the June 21st or June 23rd. So what you'll see there is sales tax was only $400,000 short is what we were projecting at that point. And this was based on data from the state. for us to start monitoring sales tax and our lottery. Lottery here is 0, but if you would have asked a week before this presentation was done, we were projecting about $1.5 million short in lottery funds, and we didn't find out until about June 17th that the state was going to honor the full lottery allotment. So getting into our actual results, and I just want to point out that these are unaudited. We're still making some tweaks, but these numbers are going to be fairly close. Our budgeted membership for FY20 was 29,351. Our actual was actually 29,364. And that was actually a little bit lower than we were expecting during the year. It was higher, but part of what impacts that is our special education regional tuition that we get now. There are a certain number of students that aren't counted towards our ADM, but we get some direct funds from the state for those. If you recall, I just told you that we were projecting sales tax to be $400,000 short, and that was at the end of June. Prior to that, it was $800,000. It ended up coming in $820,000 over budget, and lottery ended up being in line with budget, just a couple $1,000s more than the original budget. Federal revenues exceeded by $230,000. Our federal revenues in our operating fund are primarily our Medicaid reimbursements, which have been growing each year. That is going to probably look different this year. And then our impact aid, which is usually steadily around $1 million a year. We had local revenues, a shortfall of about $77,000. I just wanted to point that out because included in that shortfall were insurance proceeds that were above budget. So overall, our shortfall was actually greater. And the local revenues, some of that is offset by expenditure savings as well. So this is just a comparison that shows what we had in our June projections right around June 15th to our actual unaudited projections. So we went from about $2.5 million shortfall to actually exceeding budget by a little over $1 million, and you see that's about a $3.5 million swing. On the expenditure side, this is fairly high level, but wanted to start to touch on it, and even though we don't have complete final numbers yet. Had savings on the expenditure side, comp and benefits. We're under budget of about $1.7 million. On some of the other non-comp benefits, total 3.7, but that's made up of utilities had about 700,000 and fuel was about 230,000. Those are some of the bigger line items that were unrelated to our materials and supplies savings, and point those out because those were probably directly related to being shut down in the middle of March through the end of the year. So getting us into just like kind of high summary level, with the additional revenues and the savings that we incurred during the year on the expenditures, overall, projecting a carryover of our county transfer money of funds of about $5.5 million, which is 1.8% of our total budget. Reminding you that our FY21 budget included a $1 million carry forward of our FY20 funds. So we need the $1 million from FY20 and FY21 to balance the budget. So that leaves $4.5 million. And as like every other year, if we are going to spend those funds in FY21, we will require a Board of Supervisors action. That's usually done after the audit is completed, which typically is sometimes can be in December, but more likely is going to be in January. In the prior years, last year specifically, we sent over a letter, I believe September timeframe, from the board with what their intentions were of the carry forward funds. And so I would just recommend that this may be a fab item, Dr. Warner, that we can discuss next week to start generating some interest in what the carry forward funds can be used for in FY21. Leading that, I realize there could be some questions on that. If you guys have any questions on 21, I'm more than happy to answer those. As we get into the or maybe I said FY21, I meant FY20. As we get into the FY21 discussion, might give a little bit of insight into not all of that $5.5 million, but maybe we need to leave some of that $5.5 million to help us balance some of the FY21 shortfalls.
Madam Chair, I have a quick question.
Sure. Ms. Hollerback, start
At
us
the
off.
last FAB meeting, we got a little bit into the savings that we had in health benefits and things, and we talked a little bit about maybe continuing with the health
Holiday.
holiday.
Insurance premium holiday.
Are you going to be bringing that to the whole board, or are we going to bring that back up at the next FAB meeting and then bring it to us?
Yeah, it's on my list for the next FAB meeting.
Okay.
Yes.
That's this week, right?
Next month, yeah,
Okay.
Monday.
Look forward to it.
Yep.
Any other questions on FY '20? Ms. Young?
Yeah, I'm assuming that this was FY20 that you just showed us, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so with the, you said something about the unbudgeted insurance?
Yeah,
Is that
so we
what I-
typically,
yeah.
oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, so I was just wondering if you were short there, do you foresee any problems happening during this COVID that we need to look to see if we need to budget more? I don't know if we could do that or not, but
Yeah, so.
what do you expect?
Yeah, so the insurance proceeds is a revenue line item. So if we have damage from a storm to one of our buildings, our insurance company will reimburse us for those costs. So we don't budget for those because we don't know what the costs are going to be. So we usually have an unfunded contingency, so it's been appropriated by the Board of Supervisors, and as we get those insurance proceeds in, we can then spend them on those projects. You're not speaking health insurance? No, no, these are property insurance.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
All right, anything else on FY '20? All right, Mr.
All
Feldman,
right.
on to next year.
Yep.
The next year.
So FY '21, and this information is very similar to what has already been shared with you, but I wanted to go through it with you in person. So state revenue, we've already received updated sales tax projections. The governor presented to the General Assembly. And so for FY '21, it was a $1.62 million impact. And actually, he presented 2 years, and the impact for FY '22, I don't have it on hand, but it's right around the same amount, $1.5 to $1.7 million. So we're not too concerned about FY '22 yet because we haven't built that budget, but it will impact the projections that we use from the state when we start building the FY '22 budget. Additionally, the largest impact of our state revenues are based on enrollment, so our basic aid. And unfortunately, with our current enrollment being down, that's going to cause a dip in our state revenue numbers. So right now, the number showed of $4 million is assuming that we have an ADM number of 29,100. We budgeted 29,865, which actually was a reduction from what we started the process when we started building FY '21, and actually what the state's projections were for us prior to COVID, which was 30,050 approximately. So we reduced that in the budget process, and then we also took $3 million and set it aside just in case we got into this situation and the state revenues did not meet what our projections were. So in summary, the total state revenue is projected to be short $5.67 million, and that is preliminary. We're sitting at current enrollment, as I said, about 29,100, which is what we base this off of. We won't know our actual enrollment numbers and probably for another week or so when we start having kids drop off the rolls that have not been present at all for the first 10 days of the school year. So we could possibly see that number drop. We could also see some fluctuations going the other direction and some increases as well because we typically add kids during the year. We just won't have a solid number yet on the state enrollment number. I guess all in all, we could see actually that state revenue shortfall increase or less state revenues come in, even what we're showing in this projection. Really quickly on the federal revenue, we expect Medicaid reimbursements to decline by about $450,000 based on a lot of that is generated when the kids are actually in the building receiving those services. The miscellaneous local revenue is a small chunk of only $320,000, small compared to our state revenue number. As I mentioned, so this total $6.44 million, but we did set aside $3 million, which leaves us at a revenue shortfall of $3.44 million, which rolling into how are we going to cover that $3.5 million. We already have identified expenditures, savings, non-contract wages and substitutes. So that is not the full amount for the year. That of the total budget, that's about 20 to 25%. We expect a decrease. We're still going to need subs even in the virtual environment, but we do expect a decrease. And that's not all substitute, that's non-contract wage as well. So anticipate we're not going to need to bring in hourly help, and we can use some of the staff and reassign duties to try to fulfill some of the additional wages that we would normally incur. Some of that being we always incur additional bus driver hours even in a normal year. So right now, in the virtual environment, we're not incurring that because we're able to spread the hours throughout the bus drivers. Additionally, are still implementing a position freeze, that same as we had in FY20 at the end of the year. So rolling that into FY21, saving about $500,000 for, basically, that's through the end of this calendar year. Still reviewing lots of items on our non-compensation side of things. Right now, just trying to grab the easy, low-hanging fruit, which knowing that we're not going to be able to do much travel in this time, and professional development is going to be limited because of that travel limitation. So that was about $160,000. So that generates about $3 million in expenditure savings, which gets us within $500,000 of our total shortfall. And this is still a very fluid situation, so I even have $500,000 in our funding contingency that we have every year. I don't really want to rely on that because we're going to have other things that are going to pop up during the year that we may have to tap into that $500,000 of funding contingency. But I believe with vacancies and such that I think we can make up that $500,000. What I'm probably more concerned about is monitoring the state revenue number to make sure it doesn't drop much more than it already has. So any questions on FY21?
Questions on FY21? I'm going to just make one comment. Mr. Fulmer, just to be clear, when we talk about the reduction from the state regarding ADM, that is tied specifically to Stafford County's number of students. It's not that there's been any change to the ADM amount, at least at this juncture from the
Correct.
state. It's really
Correct.
just ours. However, there have not been glowing
Right.
information coming out about the state budget. So that is, as you said, something we need to continue to watch. But just from the ADM, that is very much no state change to the formula. It's right now what our best guess is as to how many students we have. Is that correct?
Yes, correct.
All right, any other comments? All right, thank you very much, Mr. Fulmer.
I'm going to stay up here for the next one when you're ready.
Sure, let's move right along to our update on summer school projects and 3R projects.
So you have a report attached to the agenda, or maybe it's in front of you, and I apologize, just trying to fit it on one page, so it's a little bit smaller than I would have liked. I'm not going to go through each one of these line items because you can go through. I'm going to go over the big ticket line items, though. The first two are just replacing flooring at Brook Point High School, replace flooring in the cafeteria, and then Gale Middle School, replace the carpeting. Both of those projects are substantially complete. The Rock Hill Elementary School replace mechanical systems was a large multi-year project. That project is substantially complete. The same as Hampton Oaks roof, Park Ridge roof. There is some work to be done, but the bulk of it is complete. The Ferry Farm Elementary School renovation, that's obviously one of our bigger projects right now. It's seen some delays, some related to COVID and the processing of getting that project rolling along. Primarily, as it relates to COVID, is there were delays on the steel order and production, as well as some other cabinetry stuff that wasn't a huge delay, but did cause some reshuffling of that project. Long story short, there is it's well underway. Has seen significant progress here in the last few weeks. Are expecting the temporary occupancy of the classroom space and the office space in about the next 2 or 3 weeks. So it'll be in the month of September. And then they have already started a lot of you don't really see construction of it, but of the addition that goes kind of back behind the school, some of the utility work and some of the site work is prepping that, and that is about to get rolling very soon. So we actually see steel work going up and foundation work, and overall, that's expected to be completed in March, April timeframe. Also, one of the other big projects that was approved by the board last year was our energy performance contract. And that was going into a lot of the schools. It was lighting and some other energy efficiencies. It was, we took out a capital lease, but it was paid for from the savings of the energy savings. So that got started right away back when it was approved, and it's been going on for probably 6 months or so. And so it is scheduled to be completed in early 2021. We have the North Stafford High School exterior envelope that was approved last year as part of our bond project. It was about a $2.5 million cost, but we're only doing roughly $1.5 million of that now. There's a second phase to that that comes later, and that was the exterior, I'll say facade, but there was a little bit more to it than that. If you've driven by there, you can actually see that a lot of that's been taken down, so the demo work has been done, and now waiting on the panels are actually coming any day now, and they'll start the installation of those. The kitchen AC projects are substantially complete. The school bus AC project, where all the 100 buses identified were completed, so that leaves us with now we have 189 buses with AC and approximately 80 without AC, and that's by design because we did not renovate the buses, install the AC in the buses that were older than 10 years old, and we would not get the proper life expectancy out of those AC units before the buses needed to be retired. And then lastly, the VoIP telephone system, which is division-wide, is underway. IT is manning that one, and the network cabling is well underway, about 25% complete. And actually, next week, we'll have our first 2 sites go up live on the new system, and then about every week after that will be 2 more sites approximately each week. And that's expected to be completed in spring of 2021. Any questions on those?
Can you tell me, what does substantially, what does that mean?
So basically, it's been turned over to us, but there might be punch list items that need to be completed.
Okay, so we gave the air conditioning projects for the kitchens early time because kids were gone. And they, as of, if start time of school was what it was supposed to be, they were not complete by then. So what have we learned? Because as we come into rolling out the new HVACs for the next allotment of schools next year in a short summer again, how are we going to be assured that these projects will be completed on time? Because, I mean, you have, we have a lot of grace to give right now because the kids aren't in buildings, but we need to, I guess I'm a little concerned, you know, I'll get to Ferry Farm in a minute, but I'm a little concerned that we gave lead time and they're still not completed on time, but we're lucky that we're not in there. And we have another batch coming, and I want to make sure that we're not behind time there.
Yeah, so I think the kitchen ACs were probably very close to the start of school, so don't get me wrong, but they were right around that time frame. But they were always had the ability of, if they went past, they weren't always expected to be completed. The plan was to get the construction piece of it done that impacted the kitchen, and then the units may come in later and could be installed on the roof, or, you know, if there were delays there. Correct, without disrupting the kitchen.
But what are we thinking about then as we look forward to next summer with the next batch, per se?
So it would be the same thing with the goal being getting in and doing the work that disrupts the kitchen, and then the work that happens outside of the kitchen, you know, installing the actual units, and in most instances maybe on the roof, would be completed. It could be completed during the school day with kids in the building. Is that right, Johnny?
I'll just add bidding early, and we're pre-qualifying for many of these upcoming projects, so that has to happen early. And then also getting the school board approval on time and the appropriation. So all of that has to happen. And we did run into a little bit of delay, even though we had the buildings earlier. We ran into some of the delays with the approvals because it was right when the pandemic hit. So that's what happened. Yep.
All right. We'll come back, Ms. Randall. Any other project questions? All right. Ms. Randall, do you have some more? Okay. Mr. Fulmer, the only one that I wanted to understand substantially complete, the fire alarm replacement, that means that it's working, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, that's the main thing that I
That's
know
at-
that we have
at
people
North
in and
Star?
out, but that was, I know, an emergency project, and that was, they're all important, but that one, when, I just
Yeah, and
want
I
to make
probably
sure it's
skipped over
working.
that one. I was just trying to
No,
expedite
and you should
through.
have. It's not one, it made me think that when substantially complete meant it's working.
Yes.
So that it's safe in our buildings. So, all right, thank you very much for this update. As we say, as somewhat alluded to by Ms. Randall as well, I think this shows and underscores again the things that we do on the 3R list, what they are and why they are important, and again, the advocacy for our buildings and the needs that we have. Just, these are all things that were very important. So, all right, moving on to report on exempted categories. I'm going to turn that to Dr. Kisner, and then I'll,
Okay. I was going to ask Chris to do it because he's doing such a great job up there. Why haven't you said it? All right, so on July 28th, when you took action on our return to school plan, one of your motions was to have an update on September 8th, so that's what we're doing. Just to recognize that you are getting an update, and a lot of these numbers change. We actually adjusted some of these numbers early this afternoon. So again, just very quickly, you're familiar with this. Just a good reminder that our division continuous improvement model focuses on equity and high expectations. Ensuring all students can access the curriculum is an essential beginning component. I won't read this to you, but this is from the Virginia Department of Education, and it speaks to the prioritizing of children to be at school, and you'll see that the July 28th plan is consistent with what the DOE recommended. So again, I know this is familiar to you, but early childhood programs, English learners, I'll get into that a little bit more in detail. Certain students with disabilities, students without internet access, and starting next week, we will be bringing students in for the CTE programs. So just very quickly, this is one slide we did not, anyway, the number is, we have 207 students today in both sites, early childhood, coming in, okay? So the numbers fluctuate, but Kathy Massey left a message, it's 207, so that's, but you'll see that all their children qualified by the nature of the children. But you can also see that many parents selected just a virtual, okay? So the selection was, the group of children came from the hybrid list. Okay, so English learners, again, I won't read this to you, but that helps you understand the decision-making. Again, just to remind ourselves that level 1, which are basically non-English speaking children, and level 2, beginning English-speaking children, that was the two targeted groups of children. The other data I'll show you, but I'll just mention it now while I'm thinking about it. We give a test called a WEDER. It's a test that screens children's English proficiency. That test is just beginning for kindergarten children. So these numbers will increase as we go through the assessment for children through kindergarten. So again, I just want to let you know we have hubs, okay, to maximize our resources. Again, I won't read it to you, but I'll just give you an example. So like Anthony Burns and Hampton Oaks is going to Margaret Brent Elementary School, okay? That's an example. And we tried, again, to follow the AB grouping for our students. And I know some of you had a chance to visit some of the programs, which, again, you're always welcome at any time. So again, what I just mentioned about kindergarten to be determined, again, these numbers are last week's numbers, so things fluctuate, but you get a sense that as of now, or at least when we did it last week, 374 students, and we anticipate that that will increase, obviously, when we start screening the kindergarten children. Again, middle and high school, we're doing the hub. I had a chance last week to visit Stafford High School, and you see that Brook Point, Colonial Forge, and Stafford High School are at that program. And again, it's the same model, that it's level 1 and 2 English learners. All right, middle school, again, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, approximately 78 students. Again, those numbers fluctuate, but that's what it was the day we put this together, which was, I think, last Thursday. High school, about 126 students, again. Oh, I was going to say, I was looking for the middle school. You can see, again, we have the hub. Okay, all right. Students with disabilities, and I want to thank everyone, but I need to say this, and I know Dr. Harmer's here, and it is an amazing task. They had to go back and revisit every IEP, revisit a lot of the 504 plans, because obviously we did the IEPs thinking that we were either going to go back to a normal schedule or go back to a hybrid model. And then we had to, there was criteria that we looked at. It's still ongoing. I know he met with a family today, because I saw it. So it's ongoing, but we could share some numbers with you. Again, I do want to thank our staff. We have a lot of staff that have been planning and coming in and preparing and writing things, and I thank them greatly. But I won't read this to you, but it's, and for the public, it's on our board docs if you are interested in seeing this PowerPoint. All right, so again, these numbers will fluctuate, but you could see we, 87 in our early childhood, 118 at the elementary, 39 at the middle, and about 41 at the high school level. Okay, so career technical education, as I just stated, that this will begin next
Dr.
week.
Kisner, can I ask a real quick question? Do they also work in hubs?
No, well, yeah, they work in hubs. It's not, if you go to Garrisonville, you're definitely at Garrisonville. We tried to do that, but there are cases where we brought a couple classes to a school. Yeah. Okay, again, this one, maybe I'll just spend a little bit more time on. So identification of courses that require face-to-face time in order to gain industry certification. Identification of courses that have required in-person hours for state licensing exams. Identification of students who would need to be able to do some work on-site in order to complete, like the Boots project, okay? And I know you're already aware that the firefighters project program, that has been face-to-face. So again, I'm showing you numbers that are accurate when we did it, okay? So I don't want you to go into a program and say, wait, you said that would be 46, I only see 45. But that, we had more students initially targeted, but then teachers worked out some virtual options, and some of the students will be second semester, okay? But you get, I think if you add it up, it's about 320, something to that effect and this is spread out among all 5 high schools, okay? All right, students with internet access, this is the group that will probably see a gradual increase. So what well, I'll just go over it, but what we wanted to do is obviously make sure that every kid could get on, okay? And then we looked at things that we gave in the past, like Khajiits, and even with Khajiits, some children did not have the quality of connectivity that was necessary. So as our teachers and principals and school counselors and others are beginning to identify, remember, we've only been open a week, and I should have started off by thanking everyone. You know, no superintendent should ever say things were perfect, but I have to say we had a lot of success. And we had hiccups, and you know, everybody's using that term hiccup. I don't know why, but we had some hiccups, and we are addressing them. But overall, I'm very proud of the people in this room, remarkably proud of our teachers and parents, recognizing that this has been a journey together, which is also challenging. But anyway, to make sure that children do have access, we open up cafes, internet cafes. Just so you know, at the high school and middle school, the cafe is your building, okay? Elementary, right now, there's 3 sites, but we may open up more sites, and I'll show you that in a minute. I will tell you again, when I was at Stafford High School last week, I believe I know what, at that time I was there, I wasn't there for the whole day. There was not a student at the cafe. The elementary
I
kids
like
I've
the word
seen.
internet cafes.
What's that?
I said I like the word internet, student internet cafes.
Internet cafe is a nice word. We provide coffee and other stuff, but, so, we started on the 31st, and Hartwood, Stafford, and Whitewater, and I think you all understand why those 3 schools were originally selected. And this I will turn to the audience if someone knows the answer. It's like a game show. We were thinking about expanding. Did we expand to Margaret Brent at Rock Hill? All right, we're going to come back with that answer, okay, after a commercial break, okay? But, so we have Margaret Brent and Rock Hill as potential options, because obviously we're following all social distancing and we're following all the health standards. So if it gets too many children, then we have to open up additional sites. All right, okay, so here, good, we got the answer. Internet cafes began at all middle schools except Gale and Dixon Smith, and that's, probably because kids at Gale and Dixon Smith. And students will come from 10 to 3. This is a 5-day-a-week program, and we provide transportation, and we provide food. All high schools, okay, right, said that, students 10 to 3. Some CTE students may be joining the internet cafe following their face-to-face instruction, which would be fine. And we have staff there to help the children and all that, so it's great. So this meet qualifications for internet cafe. That is pretty much where we invited. Some families chose, some families found other accommodations for their child. They went to a neighbor or relative's house or some other place. So 571 students were identified, and then another 600, about 600 students potentially met the qualifications to see about 1,167 students. I don't believe we have that many students in our internet cafes, but we made it available and families were aware of it, and we worked with transportation to offer that. On the 22nd, I'll talk more about how we're taking attendance so we can monitor engagement. So that's one thing we're also very aware of. So if a student hasn't turned on, or a student turned on and drops off, then we're making a phone call or a contact to say, hey, we have a place in one of our buildings that you need to come and do that.
So just to be clear, students can join the internet cafes if they start to have connectivity problems at home or?
Absolutely. It's fluid, it's open. Obviously, we would like to know prior so we can provide transportation if necessary and make sure we're following the social guidelines. Okay. Okay, so invitation participate, one of the exempt program options does not necessarily mean a family will choose to participate. School nurse on site, breakfast and lunch available on site. Yeah, this is important because a lot of kids are working on different subjects and different grade levels. Personal headsets were provided and transportation provided. And I don't know if Westmoreland County watches our school board meetings, but I do want to thank Barry and Transportation because they've been very flexible and accommodating. So, overall, we met our initial goal was to identify exempt students. I would say that probably the children with disabilities and the English learners maybe were a little bit more challenging because of what you need to go through to get the agreement with the families and identify. But overall, I think, it's good that we have this available for young people. I mean, for all people, but, I've only been at the elementary sites.
All right. Ms. Healy. Ms. Healy starts.
Dr. Kisner, is the Phoenix Center in person?
Say it one more time.
The Phoenix Center, what is the status of the students there?
What's that?
She wants to know, are students going to Phoenix Center?
The alternative
Oh, yeah,
school.
Phoenix Center, that's actually another location. We have that for our 2 groups of children. The Phoenix Center are for students that are under the McKinney-Vento Act. So we're providing transportation for those children, and that's their actually internet cafe. And then for certain children in a Phoenix Center, mainly children that are within a credit or so, credit recovery to graduate, they're attending part of the day there also.
But it's not all students, or
What's that?
is it all the students who would normally attend?
No, it's not all the students. They also have a virtual model. It's predominantly virtual, but we also know that some of those students would benefit by being in. Okay, thank you.
Ms.
Oh.
Young, oh, Ms. Young, did you have a question?
Yeah, well, just a comment. So I'm very, very happy to hear that. I know I've been annoying you about identifying these students that needed intervention. So I am happy that they're also available to go to the student internet cafe. And I would love to see if we could branch out and bring my kiddos from K through 3. I would love for them to be able to get face-to-face also. I know I opened up a can of worms, but.
Dr.
Yeah.
Chase?
So I just wanted to, for people who are listening, it looks to me like, so we're somewhere between 2,000 and 2,500 students of the student body of 30,000. So we're well below 50% occupancy in our building. So we're less than 10%. So that's a relief in terms of thinking about this virus, and the reason that we are not in person right now for everybody is because of that concern. And so it certainly looks to me like the exemptions are not overly, are not increasing that risk overly much.
I was wondering if transportation has been an issue. Are we able to get the students transported and in and out relatively smoothly? Because I know that that's one of the difficulties, is trying to keep that social distancing and monitor the children as they're coming in.
That aspect has been fine. We did have, the first day, I think I even told you, we had 3 buses go to one house. We were so excited to get them there. But if that's our worst story, that's not a bad story. So I haven't heard anything related to any concerns about people not putting on masks on the bus, and obviously the people are following where they're supposed to be seated. So that has worked out. I just want to maybe give one more accolades to the ITRTs and Jay Cook and his group. I don't know if troubleshooting is the right term, but they're educating and troubleshooting, and they're doing whatever they can to get get people on, and I know the ITRTs. As I walk into the buildings and talk to teachers and others, I would say, at least 1 out of 3 make a point for me to know how great their ITRT. So I want to make sure I thank them.
Is there any opportunity, do we need to do anything to help with what in that arena in terms of Jay having enough personnel, or, does everybody have access now?
Wait, I
Dr.
got my
Chase, can you
interpreter.
translate? She'll translate.
She wants to know if Jay has the personnel he needs. Does he have?
So the answer is no, but there is a position, I'm just being honest with you. And so we never really replaced Jay. That's what we do, we give you a promotion, but now you do twice as much.
And then you keep your old job.
So I don't know where we are. He's seeking, and he needs to, and maybe maybe you actually appointed this person tonight, but there's a position to oversee the canvas manager, because that is truly a full-time job. So he has that position posted. So anyway, that position, he's very much looking forward to be employed, because he puts a lot of time in troubleshooting issues related to Canvas.
So just keep bringing it up over and over again, just so you know, that's my background, technology. I know when there is a need, and so if I'm annoying you all, that I know there's a need, and people are working, 2 and 3 days at end without breaks, there needs to be some type of, interference there, that they could have normal life also. We cannot burn them out, right?
Okay, thank you.
All right, any other questions?
Oh.
No? All right.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much for that report, and I think that gives us a sense of, all the happenings going on in our buildings. It's very hard to know. Most families are focused on their individual situation, which is important, but it is good to know what other pieces and things are going on in our schools, which are a lot.
Chairwoman, I had one more thing, I'm sorry, Chairwoman Hazard. One of the questions I had, Dr. Chase, if you wanted to pass it on to Dr. Kisner, was the CTE classes. I know that everybody needs to have certain CTE number of hours. I just wanted to make sure that it was clear that those individuals could get it done virtual, correct?
Right, so we actually gave a lot of latitude to the staff, to teachers, to make a determination which programs should be at site and which programs can be done virtually. Okay. Thanks.
Thank you.
And I know that's going to be an ongoing dialogue
be
as we
ongoing.
move through the year. Next on our agenda is our citizen comments. As of right now, we have nobody that has signed up. However, I am going to give the invitation in case there's anybody here who did not sign up and was just waiting to run forward. So each speaker is allotted 2 minutes. When speaking, please first clearly state your name and voting district if you know it. Comments should be limited to items on the agenda, and anyone wishing to submit their comments on any item on this agenda without attending the meeting may do so by emailing their statement to the school board clerk, and any of those comments that are emailed to the clerk by 4:30 on the prior Monday, will become part of the record. So, having nobody signed up, is there anybody in the audience wishing to address the board? And if so, please just stand up and then make your way to the podium. Okay, I see everybody looking at each other of going, who's going to go? And nobody is jumping up, so I am going to say that we will then go ahead and close public comment and move on to our committee reports. We'll start with governance, and I will just caution all members, not just for our board reports and member comments. We have some additional items at the end of our meeting tonight, so brief is good. So.
For our governance meeting, I just wanted to remind everyone that we have Charlene Green coming on September 23rd. I had Missy send out to see what everyone's availability was. And Sarah said that 6 o'clock was not going to work, correct? Okay, so she said she can do 7 to 9. So Charlene Green, September 23rd, 7 to 9. In November, we talked about how the VSBA is now virtual, but typically every year we go for a dinner of just the board. Understanding there's no business to be transacted, but we still can meet. And in lieu of that, I suggested that we possibly do a dinner with the board and Dr. Kisner and his cabinet leaders as a way of just kind of getting to know the people, especially as we're coming into yet another crazy budget season because of the season of time that we're in. Holly suggested that perhaps we may even switch it to a service project, but Missy will pull everyone and see preference and dates of either November 18th or November 19th. And this is all in an effort to grow our board. We talked about streamlining our committees. We had 3 different areas that came up. Strategic operational planning, which would encompass finances and capital priorities and planning, and I'm going to have this all put together for you, but I would like it, if I'm giving it to you now, so if there's anything you would like to give to me, we can finalize it at our governance meeting on the 17th. Performance monitoring and audit, which would include quarterly performance reviews, but this is not asking Dr. Kisner and staff just to do reports. There needs to be something substantial that we want. Either it's a goal that we've asked for him or goal that we've set for us, but just not to report, based on making sure reports are asked for and serve a purpose. The last one is external stakeholders, which would include joint schools, legislative, Stafford Education Foundation and Head Start Policy Council, and this helps us to put together a messaging that's consistent with our outside sources, declaring what our needs are, how can we be of service, how can they be of service, and have us be more of a community service place where they can get information and we can receive information as well as services. And then all of these committee heads would report to governance, who also would be the board of chair. And this flow is something that we're not going to like dump on us right now. We're going to look to possibly approve in November with implementation in January when we assume new positions. So everybody's staying where they are right now. Other business that was brought up was getting started on the advisory committees, the PTO and PTA organizational meeting dates, which are coming up. We just said that in September probably wasn't a good time since we did start school later, give them a little more time. And that if we have communication with citizens, whether they're yours or not, just make sure you're identifying yourself as the one who's making the statement up from your perspective and not necessarily the board, unless it was a board vote, of course. And that's it. Thank you.
Comment? Madam Chair?
Oh, yes.
Can we check on September the 3rd, because I'm not sure if I told you. It either has to be before 6 or after 7:30 because I'm in class. So you want to double check if I accepted that date or not?
I'll check on what you said.
Okay.
Okay, moving on. Board member comments. Who'd like to get us started? I'll take. Anyone? Ms. Healy, you want to start us?
Madam Chairman, in the interest of time, I'm going to pass tonight. We have a closed session when we finish, and I'm hoping we don't finish as late as we finished in the past few meetings.
Ms. Randall? I'll just go right around.
Yeah, so I would like to make sure that in the same interest of Dr. Kisner, thanking all of our teachers and staff and that put together, the first week of school, and all that entailed. I, saw a lot of parents that were very, very jittery about it, and some, had the internet issues, some couldn't find their teachers. I know in one instance, a teacher was trying to teach students how to mute and unmute. And I guess the internet for the school system went down, and the teacher was not in the class for like 8 minutes and came back in, and the students were going, mute, unmute, mute, unmute. So, way to go. But, they were still there, all of them. So anyways, I just wanted to say, it is a super challenging situation. I definitely echo Ms. Young. We have to get those K-3s in. This is just a lot of work on parents and the educators as well. I would love to see the K-3s in. The other thing I'd like to talk about is Ferry Farm. I have to say, though, this board up here has been supportive. They all know that this is not a project that turned out how it should have been. Irene and I were on the CIP committee when it was put last and for a rebuild. And then we've seen it graded high to where it needed to be first on the project list as a rebuild. And then it went to this devastating plan of phased renovation, which absolutely killed it. And so what we have is an incomplete, it's a project that's going to look beautiful for all of the students engaging in music, art, and library when it's complete. It's sad because COVID. The addition was supposed to be started earlier, and they haven't even put the footers in yet. So it is terribly behind. The K1 hall should have been done. It's behind. Yes, COVID. Yes, we've been through 3 superintendents on our side. They've been through 6 on their side. And those kinds of things, I understand in construction world a little bit happen. My husband definitely, he does John's, but for data centers, just same job, so I get it. But it's still very hard because this school is the only, where Dr. Kisner had told me at one point, like in some schools, 80% of the teachers are in actually doing work. This school doesn't have that option. And the teacher stuff is all piled, and thank God for Jennifer Spindle. She knows exactly, I mean, you could ask her for any single piece of paper, and if I showed you a picture of this cafeteria in this gym and tell you she could find it, I'm not lying, she could find it. She does an exceptional job, but those teachers don't have access to the manipulatives, they don't have access to their books, they don't have access to a classroom, they are missing out with what most teachers in this county have, and they're still doing their job. The trailers are there, and those teachers have those trailers still. There's definitely some things that are, whoopsies, and then there's some things, though, that when you look in there, of course, I've had kids there for 13 years, so I know what that school looked like, I sounded like, and had problems with, but everyone up here has attended either the town hall meetings. Dr. Warner, when she first came on, drove all the way from Whitewater, all the way to Ferry Farm, and walked the school with me so she could learn it. And before votes happened, before I was on, people called me to say, I just want this project to go. And so I'm not saying, this board up here has definitely supported it, but this project itself is not kind. I so appreciate the work of John Anderson, and even Chris was out there with me today. I am feisty. Hello, my birthday's the 4th of July. It's just what you get. But they work with me, and I appreciate that a lot. But I want to advocate for all the teachers in the building, not the K-1s. They should, Grafton and Falmouth, I toured those schools. They got paint, they got carpeting, they got technology, they got cabinetry, they got everything. And I'm working with them so hard to give all of those teachers something in that building so that they don't walk through the pretty parts and go back to go, holy cow, what is this? So I do appreciate, all the extra efforts when I come buzzing through the building. So that's it. Thank you.
Ms. Hollerback?
I'm just going to say, welcome back to everybody. Thank you for all the effort that you've put in. I was one of those jittery moms this week. In an interest of time, I'll defer my time. Thanks.
Ms. Randall did not get the memo, neither did I. Okay, so I'm just going to start with the legislative committee meeting. Am I supposed to mention that too here? Because I didn't. Okay. So basically, there were only, actually, for the 2020, there were 2 top initiatives on the General Assembly, and one was the public day school, and the second one was the teachers' pay raise to make that consistent with the national average. Yeah, we have some work to do there because the national average is 62,304. Virginia's average is 60,265, and Stafford is behind at 58,394. That's all I'm going to say on that. And so the other thing for us to think about those initiatives that we are thinking that we should have on this list. I know the legislative officer is waiting for me, and I'm waiting for my my chair to make some time with me so that we could go through that. And if anybody has any comments or some concerns or some things that they are interested in to getting on the legislative, I know I have cost to compete. I continuously have that. So that's mine. And if you have anything else that you're thinking of, I could put it on there, right? Other than that, yes, I am very, very happy that school is in session. And I wanted to go back to comment on Ferry Farm. So I've been here, 3 years, and I've always voted for Ferry Farm. Always, always. And so you might want to have to go back and see who voted for what back in the day. Some of us were not here, and some have been here all along. So you definitely want to go back and see what happened there and how it transpired. I'm sure you will dig out some stuff and come back and let us know what happened there. So yes, I'm very happy that school is in session, and continue to hope that everyone is safe at home as well as in school. But this is the hand that we were dealt. We will have to deal with this. As I said earlier before, I wish I could keep saying this, but my kiddos, K through 3, I want them in school. That was Pam's plan, right? So I hope we could get to that. If we adhere to mask wearing, washing our hands, using the paper towel when you hold the door. I see a lot of people holding door behind other people. That is not the way to go. I could give you a class on that. Get a piece of napkin, a piece of paper, something, and hold that door. Who's cutting me off? My time up?
Yeah, time's up.
My time. You didn't cut off you didn't, yeah, okay, Miss Randall. So I'm gonna keep on talking here. So also, I'm also happy that the schools adopted the student internet cafes. Too bad I can't trademark that, otherwise I'll be rich today. Anyway, so there are 500,000 kids that are diagnosed with COVID-19. So my expectation is I'm doing my part. I'm wearing a mask up here, and I think that we need to set the example. Everybody should be wearing a mask. When you have to speak, if you feel uncomfortable, you could take it off. But I expect everybody to show teachers and staff that we are not saying do what we say, but we are saying do as we do. So this is not a hoax, okay? We know it's real, right? The fact that we know it's real, then we need to do what we need to do to get this virus under control and to mitigate it. So let's do our part. Thank you.
Dr. Warner?
I'll try to be brief. First of all, I want to thank all our amazing faculty and teachers and staff and what they're doing. I went to all my schools, and I saw teachers who've been scouring Dollar General stores to put together care packages for their students. I saw teachers collaborating to develop lesson plans that were worthy of and excited about Canvas. I am just so impressed and so proud of the work that they've done. I went to the Head Start program and was very excited to tour the virtual classroom with the Head Start teacher and to see the backpacks and care packages that Ms. Massey and her staff have been putting together for the families and how well they're coordinating those efforts to keep those kids learning. I agree with my other board members that we need to get these K-3 kids back in school. But I am a big proponent of safety first, because we can fix educational lapses. We can't fix permanent injury or worse. So that is critical to me. I hate to disappoint Ms. Randall, but the PTO meeting for the 15th is on schedule because we decided best not to push our budget calendar any more than we had to and strain it. So that event is still happening, and I believe that Missy is arranging that for Colonial Forge. Correct. So I just want a big shout out to all our families, and I saw a lot of parents that were very nervous, and teachers were reassuring them with, don't worry, we're new at this too. So I think everybody's learning together, but the skills that we're learning, the things that we're developing are going to benefit us in our 21st educational system. So nothing is wasted here. Thank you.
Yeah, I have heard from a number of parents in my neighborhood and thereabout, and I'm basically hearing that they're pleased with how middle and high school is going. What I'm hearing, and I think we've all heard this from elementary school parents, that it's just not maybe quite what those students need. So I'm going to say what everybody else is saying, which is we really want that to be a priority to get those students back with in-person instruction as soon as possible. And then I also spoke with Dr. Kisner earlier today, suggesting that we may want to post on the website the number of COVID cases that are in our school system, because I think there are people who perhaps think that this is not happening, but we hear every week we're getting notifications about staff members, not names or anything like that, but just that there's a case here or there's a case there. And so I think it might be of use for the public to be able to see that, so that they know that this is really happening and that it's not, as Ms. Young was saying, it's not a hoax. So that's all I've got. Thanks.
Without being redundant, again, thank you to everybody who is making making this work. And I really like the comment that Dr. Warner said is, nothing is wasted in education. Sometimes it may not look like what we want it to look like, and it may not be delivered in the way that we want it to be delivered, but we will always learn. And as our teachers are striving to make sure that our students have that hunger to learn, I would say to parents, make sure that you also are saying that there is a hunger to learn, even if it's uncomfortable to you and it's not what you expect. Because you know what? The more that we model how much we want to be a lifelong learner, I've had to learn things. My smartphone is definitely smarter than I am, and it teaches me things. But you know, I have learned and had to learn skills that I never thought I would have to learn. And you know what? That's what life is about. That's what education is about. So I think as we all stay excited about learning, however it's delivered, that will be the best gift that we can give to our students. I too agree, our youngest students, the easier way or the better way for them to get that hunger is early, and I think the more we can get that in person, the better. However, again, in the most safe way possible. So I know that's something the board wants to look at. Two other areas I hope that we don't lose in the midst of our COVID discussions is something we talked about at our work session was growth. We may be also focused on the numbers and whether they go up and down. Stafford County is growing. Every indicator indicates that now with growth. You can look at some of the attachments to our work session. We are growing. We cannot lose sight of the fact that we are going to need space because we are going to all be back in the buildings at some point. We need to make sure that there are buildings there for us to come into, which takes me to what some of the things that I would like to look at for our budget going forward. Most people know I like phrases and stuff. To me, the phrases would be recognize. First and foremost, we want to recognize the amazing people who work for us and compensate them in the way that they should be compensated. We have studies, we have everything. At the end of the day, we need to compensate them at a high level. They are delivering a high level of service. And then the second part, I believe, is the word maybe recalibrate. We need to look at where we came and who was helpful, who needed some maybe additional help. How do we recalibrate for all our students, but especially those? So those are sort of mine. I know I talked to Dr. Warner somewhat about that, but I believe those are going to be the emphasis. And those things are not cheap, but also our kids should not expect something that's cheap. So I hope that the parents who have contacted all of us remember at the end of the day, we need you to advocate with us for education, that it is a priority in Stafford County. Recognize the great job that's being done. And even if there's some things that you have challenges with, many of those things may require money. Please help us as we move forward to recognize the great things going on and to recalibrate after COVID. With that, Dr. Kisner.
Okay. I have to say, I was chuckling a little bit when Ms. Randall said that Dr. Warner drove all the way down. I thought you were going to say like New York or Maine, but from Widewater to Ferry Farm. So if you saw me chuckling, it wasn't because of your comment. I just had a different picture in my mind where she was coming from. And for Ms. Healy, so she knows that I do listen to her. Last board meeting, even though the July 28th school board action was for me to really present on on September 22nd, our data, which I will. I do want to give you a background on the health metrics that we'll be looking at as a school division. And I do want to start by telling you that we have a health analysis and advisory team, and we've had 3 meetings already, and again, it's members of our staff, along with members of the health department, and also a local pediatrician who also serves as advisor for the Planning 16. So we've met And again, feel like I need to thank a lot of people, so I'll just make a point. Colette is remarkable. She works 7 days a week, 17 hours a day, and I know her nurses also are amazing, so I just don't want to lose sight of that. I do want to mention two people, though, Allison Baum-John, who, and Nathan Cass. They have been very good partners with us every time. And then Dr. Bradshaw has just agreed to serve on the advisory committee, so we're excited about that. And so, we did have a town hall on the health procedures, and our local health director retired, so there's an acting health director. I think she's out of Charlottesville, and she participated along with Nathan Cass, who's the public health nurse supervisor. So anyway, so the data that will be monitored, okay, and I think some of you already made the comment, and the data changes, but just to give you an idea. So the guiding question that the Virginia Health Department and the Rappahannock Area Health Department said is the most important question that we should be monitoring or looking at is, what is the COVID-19 case incident rate, and is it increasing or decreasing? And I'll get into that a little bit more. So the health department, and it's not a public document yet, but I'm able, because of my position, and Colette and Dr. Hummer, who's also on the committee, we do get weekly updates, which I'll get into later. But the new dashboard, which will eventually become a public document, the health department, the Virginia Health Department is still tweaking it to a point, okay? So there's three measurements, high, moderate, and low, and it's color-coded: red, orange, and yellow, okay? And there's 4 areas that they look at. What is the case incident rate per 100,000? And they provide us, like a data dashboard, they provide us a graph. And if it's above 10 or red, it's considered high or red, and it's below 5, it's low or yellow, okay? So obviously 6 to 9 is moderate. And it's very important that you look at trends. So the trend threshold is 14 days. So if you see 14 days going in either direction, then you could draw a conclusion. If you don't see it, then it's considered a fluctuating trend. And Stafford, because a lot of us get, anybody could get publicly, you could get, I think now they are only doing it Monday, Wednesday, and Fridays, but you could get other data from the health department, and you'll see some fluctuation in the data. What is the percent of people who are tested that end up being positive? Again, above 10% is high or red, and below 10% is low or yellow. There is no moderate in this one. Either it's above 10% or below 10%. And again, the trend threshold is 14 days. What is the rate of outbreak per 100,000? And I think Colette already shared with you, an outbreak is 2 cases that were caused by an individual. Is that, did I say Colette here earlier? Yeah. Claire, if I'm messing up, you come here, because, I think it's always important that I don't mess up publicly, but but.
It's actually 2 cases that are epidemiologically linked, so
Yeah.
They can tie them to each other by exposure or location.
And after 28 days, they withdraw that outbreak. So after 2 14-day cycles, so right now, I will share this piece of data, we're at 0, okay? So we got an update yesterday, and in Stafford, so there's two comparisons. One, which really doesn't make a lot of sense, but it is what it is. They have us what's called the Northern District, the Northern Region. So it's basically like King George, Caroline, Spotsy. Now, you would think that maybe we would go up to like Prince William, Fairfax, head that way, but no, we shift west. So we go west, and then we end up in like the Winchester, Frederick, county, why we should really be the other area, because a lot of people live in Stafford, work in, DC or Fairfax or Arlington or Alexandria. So, but then they give you the local data. So that's really much more important. They break it down to the Stafford data. And then what is this one, it's important obviously for the hospitals and healthcare workers. What are % of cases are among healthcare workers? And if it's 5%, above 5%, it's considered red. And again, if it's below 5%, it's yellow. There's no moderate. I will just say on this one, of the 4, this is the only one that's high. This is the only red of the 4 indicators based on yesterday's data. Everything else fell in the moderate range, okay? There's no low. So then Colette and the health department, when we met with them last Thursday, I think, we want to get to, and this is somewhat to what Dr. Chase was speaking about, is to look at our local data, okay? So we are going to report the number of positive COVID cases by staff. Now, of course, we have a very important responsibility to protect identity, so we'll do it in the aggregate. We are thinking a little bit of maybe doing it by preschool to pre-K to grade 5, middle school and high school, long as we could protect the identity. Okay, so number of positive COVID cases by students, number of staff quarantined, number of students quarantined, and the number of programs/classes we have to close. So, for example, the internet cafe at one of our elementary schools, we had to close for at least a day.
Half of it.
Oh, half of it. But the point is because we had to take some action because we weren't sure of the extent. So I think that's going to be important as we begin. And so well, let me just, on September 22nd, I'll present the actual health data, which will be the September 21st data, because we get it on Mondays, okay? And along with some of the preliminary instructional data, okay? But what I wanted to mention, again, going by the July 28th plan, that will also be the time where, I would, in a sense, make a recommendation, or at least let you know where we're heading with our pilot programs, okay? And I don't think there's any disagreement with what people are saying here. We are looking at the pilot for the younger grades. There might be a little difference on the 3rd grade, but definitely the K-1 is the initial thinking. But then the week after Election Day, whatever that Monday is, well, that Tuesday because of the schedule, we would begin, if everything goes well, is the hybrid model, okay? And we have some work ahead of us because we would want to go again and survey parents to find out, again, the data that we collected back in June is I wouldn't use that as reliable data at this point. So we are on course to follow the plan. And the first step is, of course, making sure the data, and so I do want to give you an example. Some people have maybe wondered, or one of you, I was appreciated that you actually asked the question. When we did not have the, I don't know, I'm getting tired of that word face-to-face, but the on-site orientation, like why did it change? And it changed because we literally had a meeting that day, and we asked the question, I asked the question actually, and there was a red on that most important one, the % of people, and they said, now you're thinking about bringing back hundreds of children and their families in the school, even if you do it, in sequence or segmented out. And they said, it's your call, but we would advise against it. And that's all I needed to hear. So that was why that decision. So that, of the 4 areas that I would just say what they have told us numerous times is what is the case incidence rate per 100,000. That will be the one that will, they believe is the most important. But they also were very appreciative that we're willing to look at this data to give us a sense. Now, I will say this, and Colette was with me. And I'm just going to tell you what they said, and I agree with it, but when they said it, it seems so simple to understand. They said, unless it's your spouse or maybe a family member, there really isn't a reason to be within 6 feet of somebody for 15 minutes. because that is the group that ends up getting the, not seclusion, what's the word? Quarantine. So, you know, because I asked, because we have seen, as you all know, let you know every time I'm aware of it, of people who have been positive. And I said, is there something we're not doing that we need to do? And of course, they did remind us, and this is not placing blame, this is just a reality. Our staff, myself, and all of you have our lives outside of this job. So a lot of people go to other places, okay? It happens to be, we have procedures in place to identify, and people know that if they feel unhealthy, feel sick, they're supposed to let us know, and then we want them to get a COVID case. But what the health department said, you know, you just got to remind people, why do they really need, now, there are certain children with disabilities, their staff I could see based on the needs of those children, but we have a lot of the personal protection equipment. But absent of that, since they told us that on Thursday, I really been thinking about, just think how long 15 minutes is. And being that close, so if we could get that message, besides the message of, as Ms. Young said, of washing your hands and having the mask, the social distancing, but that 15-minute part is very, very important, that you should not be with somebody that close it's 15 minutes at one time. It's not like 4 minutes, 6 minutes, 5 minutes. It's 15 minutes. So that's going to be something we're going to really work with our staff when the students start coming back, is that 15-minute, and I understand when you're a teacher, especially the little kids, you're doing those reading lessons, you're working, you know, you're doing the one-on-one. I totally get it. Pre-COVID, 15 minutes, yeah, that happens a lot. I was that teacher. But now we have to step back from that and not do it. That's the only way I would word it. Colette, Ed, if you like.
Well, one of my nurses said we're not aware of time. You know, having been in crisis situations, it seemed like some crises took hours and hours, and when you look at the clock and you start writing your note, it was 3 minutes of time that you had to deal with the student having a seizure or an anaphylactic reaction. So our ability to gauge time is skewed. She said we should all be walking around with stopwatches now. And it sounds silly, but we really need to take account of how much time and how close we are to people to help mitigate this virus. The health department did reveal that when they had an outbreak in one of their offices, 3 people who worked close together in the office were exposed to each other, became positive. The people that came through the office constantly throughout the day for miniature amounts of time never tested positive. It was the group that stayed together and were less than 6 feet. So we know the droplets can travel at least 6 feet. We know that wearing our masks, hand washing, and that social distancing piece is really important, but we have to become more time aware. And I don't know how we do that because, like I said, having been in emergency situations, what seemed like hours was minutes, and sometimes what seems like minutes is hours. You know, when you're having a good time with your family and doing something fun, time flies. So
I
it's
say we put
something-
Alexas in every classroom and in each of the nurses' office so that you can tell Alexa when 15 minutes is up.
Well, and you know, years ago, I'm old enough that when you went to the beach, the radio would come on and say, okay, all you sunbathers, it's been 15 minutes, time to flip, and the radio would announce it. I don't know if we need an every 15-minute announcement on the PA system to remind us or what, but that was how we were supposed to not fry on one side back in the day, which is terrible, don't do that. But, you know, we have to somehow become more time aware of how long we're with people and also spatial distancing. And people tend to, towards the end of the week, gravitate closer together because, you know, I'm with them all week and, you know, we're part of the Stafford County family, but we don't live with each other and we don't follow each other to every location that we go to. So we're not all exposed to the same people all the time. And so therefore, the virus becomes more widely spread. So it's a re-education process for all of us, but I don't know how to reinforce that timeframe.
Yeah. I just want to say one other thing. So we made a decision, which I think is the right decision, but sometimes, you have to, I told my staff today, if things on social media are bothering you, get off. Just like, it's very simple. I have a phobia of bees. You're not going to see me at George Washington Park having a picnic because I know there's a chance bees will be there. So we made a decision that if somebody tells us that they're sick, it's a potential suspect that we're going to inform. There's no requirement by any statute to do that. So by doing that, which is the right thing, because we think, when we want to give you a heads up that potentially Scott Kisner has, no, we wouldn't say Scott, what the hell I'm thinking? Potentially a staff member has, had to be tested, something like that, or went home sick. So we feel good about that decision. It does open us up to, I'm not going to say criticism, but people thinking, what's going on there? But I cannot, and there's a lot of people here, because it's a team discussion. And again, the health department, I doubt they're watching, but Colette has amazing relationships with them, so she could contact them at any time of day, and they will give us guidance if guidance is required. So
Can I ask
been a
a
good
quick question, Dr.
partnership.
Kisner, while I still have you up here? Did you read the article this morning in the paper about the wastewater testing?
I saw that yesterday, yes.
Was that yesterday?
Yeah.
I would be really interested to know if the health department is going to look at that and use any of that, take any of it into consideration when they're looking at this whole metric, because apparently Stafford County is a lot higher in positive cases based on what they tested in the wastewater.
Right, and they also, we're part of a study with 40 other counties in the country, so I'm not sure how, who's running the study, so I have to look at that article. I kind of glanced at it, I didn't get a chance to really fully read it, but.
Be nice to get their
But they're saying,
input.
based on what they're seeing in the water, that there's more.
A lot more cases.
In our
Like
area.
18%, I think they were saying
Yeah.
in the county.
And they look at other viruses as well. There was something about polio as well that they look at through the wastewater
Yep.
treatment facility. So there are certain viruses that we shed in waste, so that's how they're doing that study.
The other thing I learned, which I didn't realize, is that if you live in Fairfax or Prince William or Spotsylvania, and you get tested, it goes to the community in which you live, even though they could be, so it's not reported on the Stafford number. It's, I for some reason thought it would be, but, so even if you go to a Stafford physician or place to get the test, it's reported back to your home address. Yeah.
We're going to do a couple questions, but this is, okay.
I'm going to be really quick this time. So Ms. O'Connor, just so you all know, I know Ms. O'Connor for plus 20 years, so I could make this comment, right? So she said, I just want to make sure that Dr. Kisner said that you've been working 17 hours a day. There are 24 hours per day. What are you doing with the other 7? I mean, there's
Sleeping.
7 more hours to work there, huh? No, I just do want to thank you for everything.
Actually,
you-
when you framed it like that, you're right, it's probably more like 19 hours. I've had conversations with 11 o'clock at night.
I did
It's not
too.
every
Yeah.
day, though.
But, so yeah, that was just, I just wanted to ask about this District 16. Are you all on this team? Is this Rappahannock only, or is this Stafford?
No, it's the Health Department is planning District 16 of the Health Department, and it's the school health team for the Rappahannock Area's Health District.
Oh, okay,
So it's
because,
the-
yeah, Dr.
the-
Kisner doesn't listen to me, so maybe you could take this somewhere. There's 2 things. He did listen to us about the having that dashboard, so that's
don't
good.
get
Thank you
used
so
to it.
much, Dr. Kisner. I'm talking to Ms. O'Connor right now. And you know what? No emails out there sending to me because I'm talking to Dr. Kisner. We're good here. So the dashboard is one thing he came up with. That's great. Love it. But another thing, I'm thinking as a school system with Spotsylvania, Prince William, Fairfax, that we should try to bond together to get testing and for it to be cheaper and for the teachers and staff to be able to get free testing. I know sometimes you all listen to me and do something 6 months later, but think about this and hopefully we could get it earlier than that. When you talked about that half of that partition was cleaned. Was there a partition between?
They
Is
were
that
in
why
two
you did only
separate
half?
rooms. They were in two separate rooms,
Two separate, good,
Yeah.
okay.
two separate
Um,
areas of the building.
Okay, and then my last thing, I'm begging businesses out there that have space, if they want to give us space, because, you know, I like the internet cafes, and I know we're gonna be needing this space, Dr. Kisner. But if you're out there as a business and you're not using your space because your staff is working from home, and you have computers there, we would like to use your space as internet cafe. So reach out to me if you don't like me, or you don't want to reach out to me, reach out to Dr. Kisner. And maybe, you know, you could help us when we get to that point with our hybrid model. We will be needing space. Thank you.
All right, thank
Okay,
you for that
thank you.
report. Thank you for that report. We will look forward to the further report in 2 weeks. All right, next we have our consent items. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve consent items, 9
Second.
point.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Action items, we will have 5 action items. Let's start with 10.01.
Move to approve 10.01, approval of United Healthcare as the retiree supplemental group health insurance provider for retirees who are eligible for Medicare Part B.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Any questions? I know we discussed this last week, and I hope everyone notes the savings. All right, hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. 10.02,
Motion to approve 10.02, purchase of bulk fuel from Quarles Petroleum, the amount of 1.2 million.
all right, is there a second?
Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Any questions? We discussed this last week as well, or several weeks ago. All right, hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. 10.03.
4 and 5.
I think we,
Do we have to do them individually?
No.
Okay, I wasn't sure. I know in the past we have, I didn't know if it was a separate line item. Mr. Fulmer, does it matter to you?
I mean, we already discussed them, so.
Well, these have not been on the agenda before, however, they are not uncommon of coming to us because of the inability to hire certain of these positions to fill the needs of the division. So if there is a motion to
well, the
combine,
first two were psychologists, maybe lump those together.
okay, that's fine.
10.03 and 10.04, award to a contract to purchase school, or to hire school psychologists.
Second.
All right, is there any questions about this item? All right, hearing none, all those in favor of the 2 psychologists in the separate amounts as noted, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously, and one more.
10.5, move to approve the award of a contract to Maxim Travel Max in the amount of $124,875 from budgeted FY21 operating funds for 1 speech-language pathologist.
Second.
Right, it's been moved and seconded. Any questions? All right, hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Moving on to information items. Next one, this is about the school capital improvement and 3R infrastructure program, which was discussed at length at the work session. Are there any additions, comments, or further guidance to staff that we can provide that may or may not have been provided earlier?
Madam Chair, I feel like we reached a relatively stable consensus about the 4 items with the emphasis on the middle school, and I'm wondering if we can move this to action.
Are you talking about 1104?
Yes.
I thought we were only talking about 11.1, 2, and 3 right now. What are you talking about?
We are
1104?
finished those.
Okay, the 1104, okay.
No, this would be for 11.01 to move the CIP to action.
I thought we were going to
With
spend
the-
some
I
time
thought we were gonna-
prioritizing.
There's been a request. I'm not saying it has been voted on. I believe that's what Dr. Warner is requesting. But there has not been a motion unless I
No, there was
misheard.
no motion. I'm just saying that We discussed this, and I think that we were all in a consensus about the top 4 items. And just for the sake of Mr. Anderson and Mr. White and Chris, Mr. Fulmer, if we could move this to action, it would facilitate getting this information to the Board of Supervisors.
So, but I thought that we also discussed that 1 and 2 for sure, and the other ones need to be at the same level.
Correct.
We're not going to take that priority that's on there right now.
But that's what I was going to, if we were willing to vote on it, I was going to make a motion that we keep those top 4 items as our key priorities, moving the middle school and the, above the early childhood
Okay,
education.
make your motion.
Okay. I make a motion to move 11.01 to action, which would make it 10.06, I think. And that would be for the CIP priorities to be the high school 6, the,
ESAT.
Actually,
Let's first motion to move it to action. Let's do that
let's
first.
move the CIP to action.
Second.
All right, any discussion?
Madam Chair, I'm not ready to vote on this yet. I just want to have a little bit more information as far as what we can do about the middle school situation. I'm also, I guess I'm a little hung up about Heartwood, and I know that's that's further down, but also getting the space for the additional seats for the early Head Start program. So I'm not ready for that yet. And also, I'm a little concerned about our dates that we have on there. I'd like to be assured that those dates fit our needs and not fit a puzzle. I think we just need to advocate our needs, and so I'm not convinced yet.
Let's call for a vote.
Okay, I'm going to have my comment as well. As much as I want to move things to action, and I do think we have consensus, I do not like to vote on a document that I don't have in front of me. I would prefer to make sure that the dates are there and that the comments that we have about the remaining items are clearly conveyed, because I believe part of the issue that the school board has is not telling our story. And right now, I believe we have some consensus on what we want, but I don't think we've seen it yet. And there has been discussion that documents were presented that weren't the ones that the board wanted presented, and I do not want to have that happen. Again, I believe each of us can talk to our individual board members saying these are our 4, but we have some concerns. So I do like to keep to our timeline, but I also want to send the best document, and I too believe that there may be some need to adjust some dates at this
So
point.
Can we at least set a timeline that we are going to have, whatever we're going to do, have it done, if we're going to send it to the FAB? Because I thought that that's what we discussed a little bit, that it was going to go back down to the FAB or not. Because you talked about meeting, which day. So can we at least say that by whatever the recommendation the FAB brings forward, based on what we think that we want to happen, be it 1 and 2, high school 6 and elementary 18, and to move Drew up, those are the things that are going to be discussed and vote, and bring that back to us so that we could all be on the same page. And if
Okay.
anybody that doesn't agree with what was discussed here, to send it to the chair.
I'll
and make sure
withdraw
that you
my
have that.
motion to move it to action, and we'll discuss it at the FAB and have a recommendation. By that point, Mr. Anderson and Mr. White should have
Yeah,
those items changed.
yeah. And I don't mind coming to the FAB. I'll sit back, I'll be quiet, I'll have my mask on, and just be there for support.
My only comment,
Hazard, the only thing I would ask the board is if there's specific questions that you need to answer, to please get them to, just send them to Chris, so we will have it for you for the answers for you on the 22nd.
I think Ms. Healy did have a question and ask for a report, correct?
Madam Chairman, I would very much like to have information on increasing the capacity at Drew before we vote on this, because to me, that will be a significant factor in where I rank that renovation. I mean, right now, with just 63 additional seats and a cost of $28 million, I'm not prepared to move that up. But if we can significantly increase the capacity, then, you know, I would see a direct benefit to moving it up in terms of the priority. So will we have that information available for the FAB, which is next Monday? Well, it's, we talked about the day school, potentially relocating the day school and then converting that. I think we were told there'd be 4 classrooms, but I'd also want to get the cost associated with that, because I don't know whether that $28 million renovation at Drew included renovations for the day school classrooms as well.
Good question. We could have it, there's a second part to that question, which is where would we move that program? Okay, so we would have to come up with a recommendation, because if the day school's going to be vacated, it has to be somewhere. So we'll come up with some suggestions on where that could be.
And
Okay.
just as a reminder, for next Monday, I asked the question of how much money have we invested in the Heather Emphel renovations? If I could get those numbers on Monday too when we meet, that would be helpful. Thanks.
And I'd just like to make a broad comment. Anybody who watched the work session before, the board is actually very much in sync on what we are bringing forward. Tonight, it really comes down to the timing of bringing that and bringing the best recommendation forward. The one thing that we all recognize is growth is coming and we want to be ready, but we also know that there need to be options. So I hope anyone who's understanding is the board is actually not in disagreement on what's going forward. It's how it's going forward. And most importantly, from my perspective to staff is, are the dates that we have in there the best dates? Because if they need to be moved forward based on either current data or upcoming data or whatever we have, let's be upfront and say it. If we need it earlier, we need it earlier. If we need it later, whichever way it goes. I will tell you, based on our reading, I think we're going to need them sooner, and I think we need to make that case. So believe me, the staff did an incredible job. We are just trying to refine and make sure that our message is clear. So I appreciate that. I think the board is really in sync on bringing the best forward because we know that growth is coming or is going on. So any other requests? I think I've made, mine are, dates is a big one. All right. Thank you, FAB members, for Monday. 11.02, review of plans about extracurricular activities. Dr. Kisner, do you want to get us started on that one?
Yeah, okay, so I know we all have received requests by the public to reconsider the extracurricular. Mainly it's that what we'll be getting of the Virginia High School League activities. So I asked Dr. Nichols, Mr. Justice had a death in his family, so he could not be here. So Dr. Nichols is prepared, oh, good, I was going to say, better be here, prepared to discuss it, okay.
Good evening, Madam Chair, school board members. I'm here to answer your question regarding Virginia High School League and our plan for reinstating activities and athletics in Stafford County Public Schools. We have worked to develop a phased plan of phasing in our activities following the recommendations from the Federation of High School Athletics and also supported by their SMAC group, which is their Sports and Medicine Advisory Committee made up of doctors and educators. And we also have put together a plan for Stafford County Public Schools following our phased in, as I said. And right now what we would prepare to do, if given the okay to move forward, is that we would go into phase 2 where we could continue with conditioning and also skill development in which students, because right now what we're noticing is a lot of kids or folks involved in these sports have not been participating, so one of the primary things to get them back out and start conditioning work. Once we go through the phased-in approach of phase 2, which the state is already in phase 3, we would then progress into phase 3 in October, looking at starting around October 12th. At that point, we would go into phase 3, which allows continued conditioning, but then team-specific drills. It does not allow us to go in and play football against defense and offenses, or play a full-court basketball game, or engage. But what it does allow, it allows athletes to, like a pitcher and a catcher, to throw the ball back and forth. And then after they get done practicing in their bullpen, they'd have to clean the ball. For a quarterback and the football team and receivers have to wear gloves, and then they would throw the ball, and after those drills, they'd wipe down the ball. So it's very limited in what equipment that you can use. In our plan, we would start, as soon as giving the okays, we have a training protocol that we've put together, and Ms. O'Cana approved it when we put our health plan together, which we would follow a screening mechanism. It would be a process in which we would train all of our coaches and sponsors prior to allowing them to hold any type of conditioning activities. And then we put some restrictions on these activities. We'd keep it to 2 hours in length. That's from start of screening till they all go home. So it's not a half hour before practice and 2 hours of a conditioning workout and then a half hour until they all leave. We look at 2 hour maximum. We could have an activity for twice a week, depending on the group. A kid or a child may be involved in 2 different groups. That's depends, but our athletic directors and activity directors would put together a schedule for our coaches. But again, once that training's completed, they must go through the training. Students would be required to have a physical, as they normally would. And then we would proceed with screenings. When they would come to practice, we'd do temperature checks. They'd have to answer our questionnaire based on the COVID questions and their access to certain people or where they've traveled. Once that approved, they'd also come with their own bottles of water. They would have to maintain at least a 6-foot distancing with a mask. Now, if they were doing strenuous exercise under the Virginia High School League and the recommendations from the Federation for High School Sports, with a 10-foot distancing, doing strenuous activities, they could remove the mask, but they'd have to maintain the 10 feet distance between other athletes. So this is our plan. We'd like to proceed with that, looking at a training within the next 2 weeks, starting the initial phase, if we get your blessing, around the 21st of September, and then look at 2.5 weeks after that to reevaluate first to see how things are going. And then if things are going well and folks are following the procedures, the recommendations, the guidelines, we then look at going into phase 3 conditioning and team drill. And then the VHSL, their winter sports, which you're familiar with, they've moved their fall sports to starting in February, and their winter sports would start December 7th. And then their spring sports wouldn't start until towards the end of April. So it's a little different removed, but and everybody, we can get school up and running, and again, gives us time to evaluate the situations. With that process, we would then have the conditioning up until the December 7th, when the winter sports would then start if they proceed. Now, as of today, the Virginia High School League offered a webinar today, which is on the full action, or return back to action phase 4, if you would, if they were allowed to actually have competitions and games and things like that. That is their back to action phase. So they had a live webinar today in which they discussed what that would look like. And again, following recommendations from different specialists and things like that, they're developing their plan, which they'll be putting on their website shortly. As far as other extracurricular activities, that would also include marching band, JROTC, dance. We'd also look at some of the club activities. A lot of them are doing virtual right now. But again, looking at any club or activity that would come back to a face-to-face, they would have to go through, the coaches or sponsors must go through the training protocol, which each of the high school athletic and activities directors would provide to those coaches. And then they'll also document who shows up to every activity with the beginning checkoff, and then also an ending, which will be sent to Mike Justice each evening. And those practices can only run from between 4 and 6. So it's not like they'll be starting off in the mornings. or anything like that. But with that, I'm here for any questions that you may have.
Ms. Hollerback starters.
I just have two, really. The coaches, are they going to be required to start this, to participate in this? Or is this going to be, if you're comfortable being out there on the field with these kids or in a gymnasium or whatever, you're welcome to come in and be the coach for that team? How is that going to work?
Great question. We would look to our current coaches or sponsors to run and organize any type of conditioning workouts. Now, it's clearly optional. These are out-of-season practices. They're not required. It's not, if you don't show up, you can't make the team. It's totally optional for any of the students. And it's also optional for the coach if he or she or the sponsor of the activity wish to participate or not.
Okay.
And again, one question I failed to mention is that Phase 3 is all outdoors. It is not inside in any weight room, any gymnasium, using any type of equipment. That would not happen until going back into, Phase 2, we wouldn't be doing that. Phase 3, we would look at that, it'd be very limited. And again, it'd only be maybe some shooting drills in a gym and a basketball court or a volleyball, but it would not be a competition.
Okay. And then my second question is, some kids who are eligible to graduate early have chosen to do that. Because of the way we've got everything scheduled now, going into the winter sports starts December 7th, if the student technically graduates by the end of the year, will they still be allowed to participate until the end of the sporting season?
Right now, the Virginia High School League, the student has to be enrolled in school in order to participate. So if you have a student who's looking to finish at the end of the first semester, the end of January, and they want to participate in a winter or in a fall sport, they would not be eligible to participate. We've made our athletic directors and activities directors have worked with their counselors to make sure that all students who are participating in activities understand that with the new Model 3 that was approved by the Virginia High School League, they have to make sure that they're enrolled in at least 3 to 5 classes.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Gilly, go ahead. Then
Mr. Nichols, how would the students get to the school?
Right now, that would be based on, providing we haven't discussed transportation, besides families bringing their students to the school.
Because, I mean, I'm supportive of starting this because I think there's a great need and desire for it. But I don't want to keep students away that can't provide their own transportation. So I also want to be practical about it. But I think that's important. I mean, we had the activity buses to transport students to certain hub centers in the past after the practices were over. So perhaps we could, think of something like that. I think that's an important element to have as part of the plan, how we're going to address it. And I would like to know something about that before we move forward.
Definitely something to look into, whether it's the use of they're coming to practice, the use of a cafe while they're doing their schoolwork and staying after for that. Something I can definitely work with Barry Sudduth and talk about as far as an activity bus hub.
Ms. Randall?
How would if we're in Phase 2 or even Phase 3, how would students use the restroom?
One student at a time.
Thank you. But would they be allowed to come inside, or would only the outside be available?
Depending on where they're at and the school setup, they would prefer to use the outdoor team rooms, if you would, the changing areas that they have, and they would use those restrooms.
Okay.
However, depending on the facility, you do know that some of the facilities have practice fields closer to the building. They would
Right.
have to regulate that, yes.
Okay. Also, is this for middle school and high school, or just high school?
This was the high school for
Only?
athletics and activities.
Okay. And why the time 4 to 6 and not before school?
due to the fact that we thought that would be better with our teachers, as teachers are planning from 8 until 10.
Okay.
And a lot of our teachers are coaches and sponsors of activities. We'd like them to participate in the planning.
And will the dead period still be, like, I know if you're in a spring sport, the dead period is in November, and so there's not supposed to be coaching contact. Do they have are those dead periods, like, not being instituted?
The executive committee is reconvening on the 18th of September, which they're going to look at the number of competitions and also some of the fine-tuning of the proposed winter, fall, and spring seasons.
Okay, thank you.
Over here.
Oh, sorry.
I mean, you
Yes,
can go over
Vincent?
there if you want and then come back to me. It's
Okay,
fine.
let me go that way then. Dr. Warner.
So on phase 2, which is just conditioning outdoors, how many students would be in attendance at a time?
In the phase 2, they'd have 50 students, and they would work to group those students, preferably trying to use, if they had groups of, if they had 25 students, they would try to group those down to 2 groups of 12, with their coach counting within that and having supervision. They would prefer to have pods, if you would, to where we have smaller numbers of students, but we'll look at the max at about 50 students during phase 2, with the exception of marching band, where you could have more, but again, you could have multiple practice sites on the school facility. Some of our schools use the parking lot, they could also use one of the fields, different areas to bring it together.
So when you move into phase 3 and you've got specific team drills, so you've got those would be smaller groups of students, I would assume, when you bring them
That's right.
inside?
Yep.
Yeah, okay. Okay, if you would ask me today for a decision, it would be no. But maybe I don't know everything that I need to know. I would tell you that I drove by, and I'm not going to tell you where it was, but there were probably about 20 to 30 students working, and none of them had masks, and they were up under each other, and I was so upset. I had to go talk to the manager about it, and I'm like, these are our students. These are my students that work here, and you are not helping us to ensure that they're wearing their mask and they're keeping social distancing so that they could get used to it when they are in the school system to abide by our rule. And so I'm not sure who's going to, if you have a trainer or the teacher who is going to watch all of the kids that they are socially distancing. I mean, this is not a babysitting service. This is something that you have to do to protect each other. So with that said, the teachers that are also doing sports, are these teachers virtually right now?
You could have a mixture of some, depending on the school and which sport. Some of our teachers are in our buildings. A lot of our teachers are in our buildings teaching virtually. We do have some teachers who are also coaches that will have the CTE students, or it could be our ESOL students or special education students that are in right now.
Because, and I'm not sure which phase you were talking about, but you talked about marching band and ROTC, and I'm not sure band itself, but these numbers are increasing, and you mentioned cafe. And what we don't want is the percentage that Dr. Chase had just calculated for us real quick, that the numbers are going to go up, and we are going to have too many kids in there that, to increase that percentage. So that's what I was thinking about right there. And then Ms. Healy already asked the question that I had. I think she asked how they're getting. I was wondering how they were going to get home. I think you asked how they were getting there. But I was also concerned how they were getting home, and not only that, because these activity buses are pretty small, and I'm not sure how many people you're planning on putting on there. And then you said something about 10 feet. So I know why that 10 feet needs to be implemented, because they need to keep even a wider distance because of the exertion and the outtake of the breath and everything. So those are the things that I'm thinking about. And the last comment that I'm going to make, these are selected students, selected that could participate in VHSL, be it, like you said, band or OTC. I'm assuming it's football, baseball. Did you mention soccer, or there's no soccer? Soccer's a spring sport, right?
It could be any, it could be soccer,
Okay.
it could be
And
tennis,
I
track.
was looking more at, I could see the kids needing an activity to be out, and they need to be together. And I was thinking middle school and high school. I don't know what the rule is that it has to be VHSL, but I could see that, a lot of kids are going to be left out. And so I'm more for, if we're going to do something about, having some kind of sports, it should be for all. And I wouldn't want to leave anybody out. That's where I'm at right now.
And I would just say that, again, with our phased-in approach, we would keep our students into groups to supervise. That's why we want to keep them to 10 or half. If it's 25, they're split in half. If it's 50, they have 5 groups of 10. So we can supervise our kids. And just like band, you could have a big band, but you'd have to separate it. You could bring them in differently, different times for practices or different days. And the VHSL in this plan, it could go down to middle school. Again, when we looked at this, was looking at the activities and the competition season that start in December, and thus requesting a variance based on the board's actions earlier.
So when
this
I
year.
meant all kids that want to participate, not just those that are selected to participate. That's what I meant. So,
And this would be all kids. Any kids can go out to these things. You don't have to be a member of a team, because it's not a tryout.
thank you.
You're welcome.
Made me feel a little better.
Dr. Chase.
So, first of all, I just have a concern about what the message is if we're saying sports can start but school can't, that you can come to school to play sports, but you can't come to school to do academics. I also have a little bit of a problem with, I heard 15 minutes, but I'm hearing practices are going to be 2 hours long, and that they're going to stay 6 feet or 10 feet apart. And my experience with high schoolers and frontal lobe development is good luck actually getting them to adhere to that. One thing I wasn't clear, did you say that if students did this, they would not be on travel teams?
I did not say anything about
Okay,
travel teams.
so I think, in terms of controlling a pandemic, it's my understanding that we want people to be in smaller groups and not have a whole lot of interacting. So if you have somebody on a travel team that's traveling to another state or another part of of our state to another part of the country, and then coming back and being in this very small group of just 10 kids or 12 kids, you've really undone that, because they've actually been exposed to a lot of other kids. So that's a concern for me. I'll tell you, my son, who's in university right now, the way they handled sports was all the athletes are in the same dorm. So far, they have had to quarantine 3 floors of this dorm because they're not managing to control the spread in athletes. And then finally, I hear reports that for some of these athletes and young athletes, high school students, that there is a lot that we don't know about COVID, and there's some indication that there's inflammation of the heart that means these kids won't be able to play for a year and a half or 2 years. So I'm still not really comfortable, but I can certainly understand people's desire to get back to sports.
Madam Chair? One of the things that I would like to I am in favor of this. Obviously, I have a student that's an athlete as well, but the other thing and that I also understand, and, I did do the travel sport thing this summer as well, and they do actually, they're so dying to do what it is to be there that they will adhere. But it's also nice to see Spotsy has already started in. They're bringing in they've been bringing in their athletes for weeks. Fauquier is bringing them in. They even sign a waiver. Prince William has them in. You know, my husband loves football, and so, I mean, he's been watching high school football games because the others aren't up and running yet. And so I just think, though, that there needs to be the protocol, and I think the kids for the marching band, I've even seen some of those and how they've figured it out. And I know our coaches are dying to be with the kids as much as our teachers are. And I just think in an outdoor setting, for the primary part of this, preliminary part, when we start running this out, I just think that, you know, as long as the training is there for the coaches and that they have all attended, as long as the students understand their part and know that you will be asked to leave if you can't adhere, because you're not allowed to endanger the safety. And I know that there are positive cases in some of these other settings have been resulting in sometimes near to no illness and, you know, and zero hospitalizations in some cases. I just really feel strongly that these kids, under the mitigations that you are speaking of, I would definitely support it. But I did want to let everybody know that the outlying counties near us and King George called me today, and they've also started.
Yeah, and we did look at the surrounding counties. Prince William is starting September 10th, and that's why we pushed ours back to the 21st, so we can see what the other counties are doing. Some have been going since July when they first allowed the Phase 2. And we've also put together a parent waiver to more or less as an informational piece for them to understand the protocols if we would move forward.
If I could make a couple comments. I think this is an opportunity. I do think part of this is not just for sports. I just read the fine arts recommendation. I feel for a lot of those students who aren't able to experience their musical side, plus VHSL covers other activities as well. I do believe, though, and a couple things that I'm not going to say concern me that are showstoppers, but things, if there is a coach that does not feel comfortable with this, I do have concerns of parents harassing that coach. I'm going to be upfront. That I want you to be in there, and if that particular sponsor, and I say coach, it could be a sponsor, I would want, Dr. Kizzer, that is of concern to me, because if we do open up and we have a sponsor that, you know, has a concern, how do we deal with that, and we make sure that there is not pressure? Yeah. So I do have that just as a broad comment, but I do think that there are a lot of the creativity that we've also seen in the classrooms. Some sports may or may not all have to be meeting in person. So I am willing to let that, but to let there be some of that creativity, that it does not all have to start in person. You know, let's start, but I do think that the main things that have to be is the coaches have to have the ability and will enforce the rules, and that kids know, you know, you're out if you don't. I'm involved, you know, I'm learning through other colleges, depending on how you handle it at the beginning determines whether you're going home, like everybody going home. So I think that's important. I would like to get the ball rolling, but I also want to make sure that those that are involved in those coaching sponsor activities, that they feel confident of what they want and feel comfortable delivering within the models. I think those are my main things. The training for the coaches is very important, and we may not have to start at 2 hours. We may start earlier. or,
That
I
was a
mean,
ma-
I
that
didn't
was a
mean start
max.
earlier, but
2 hours is just a
to,
max.
can you tell me again about what you said, the reassessment?
Yeah,
think-
what
could
what
you
we look
go over
at
that
is
again?
around beginning of October, we would reassess Phase 2 to see how well it went, to look at any concerns that coaches or the athletic activities directors have experienced, things that we need to reassess for Phase 3, or possibly not even going into Phase 3 if we're not ready. We can push that back. Again, this is all out-of-season practice. This is not the season. The winter season starts December 7th, their first day of official practice for the winter sports. So this is out-of-season conditioning. But we do feel strongly that we want to reassess before that.
And I think we don't promise Phase 3 from the beginning, saying it would be a hope, but that, in my opinion, that it is not promised. There may not even be a date. We have to assess how Part 2 is. And I know that sounds harsh, but that's the only way we're going to know of how it works.
If I could just add something, please. So I do understand every comment that was made. I do feel like we have to start transitioning towards some level of normalcy. I also feel, as I described when I went over the health strategies, we have the option at any time to say this is not working. I also believe that I actually talked to Sarah earlier this morning about this. See kids in my neighborhood, which has a lot of playgrounds and basketball courts, not following what we would hope. This would be organized. This would have adult supervision. And I also do want to just make this point. Going back to the July 28th plan, the objective is to get the hybrid students, for the high school students, back in early February, which really will be when seasons kind of start. And so there is a part of me that do want to say that, our neighboring school systems are doing it, and the children of Stafford, if not given the opportunity when these seasons begin, I'm not sure, that's really fair. I understand the health risks, but I also believe that we would take the measures necessary to minimize it. And you see this at the college level. Some colleges have canceled sports, others are doing it. But anyway, we're not asking you to make any decision tonight. What we would ask you, like I've been consistent, if there's more information you need between now and the 22nd, please, I'm going to get off easy tonight. Just email Tom, and he'll get it to you, okay? But I just want to make that comment that I trust that our folks will take the
Madam
proper
Chair.
health measures, but I also understand the concerns that everyone raised.
Ms. Young?
Madam Chair, thank you so much. The only thing that I would like to see is the number of students that will have to participate, and I would like to clearly see the list of advantages that you are going to say that these are the advantages that the kids, you could think of many, and the disadvantages, the limitations, and I'll send you an email on it, the limitation and the delimitations of these kids coming in to this sport. So I will send you an email, number of kids, the sports, because I need to know how many kids that are going to be available, that is going to increase the number in the cafes, and how many, like teacher ratio versus the number of kids that they're going to be looking at. I would like to see that.
Will do.
So one of the things that perplexes me a little bit is, when I asked questions about what happens if a child doesn't get their temperature taken, or what happens if the health screening isn't filled in before they come in. And I was told that we really can't enforce that, and that we really aren't able to follow through on that. And so I'm kind of perplexed as to how we're able to do that for athletics, but we're not able to do that for academics.
Well, I can tell you the plan that the athletic directors and activity directors put together is that before they want to meet the kids, before they get out of their car, to to have the form, take the temperatures. I've been at Stafford High School numerous days in the morning as kids are getting off the bus, and I have not seen anyone refusing to get their temperature taken. And I've gone into a lot of our buildings, and my temperature is consistent throughout the day. I haven't experienced that, but I would say we'd have to deal with that as it comes. This is an opportunity. It's not a requirement. It's not obligated to anybody. I would say, you know, we have certain things put in place for the safety of all kids that will show up, so we'd need for parents to understand that. And again, that's part of why we were looking at a permission form, if you would, to provide parents or guardians with the expectations of what we're looking at.
Yeah, I think being on a sports team is a privilege. It's not an entitlement. So you could lose that privilege. So if the coach says this is what you have to do and you choose not to do it, we wish you well, but you're off the team. So I think that's, partial, the answer. And just like students parking in our high school parking lots, it's a privilege. We could take that privilege away if you violate the norm or expectation. I think, again, that, as Tom's saying, we would monitor it closely and make decisions based on what's in front of us. A lot of this, right now, we're kind of speculating, to be truthful with you. But I don't want to lose sight of what Ms. Randall said. I did do a little homework, and everybody's doing this. And I don't think our children in Stafford should lose out this opportunity that others are getting. So that's all I'll say.
And I'm going to piggyback on what Dr. Chase says, and thank you so much, Dr. Kisner, for making those statements, and Tom for this presentation. This is not directed at you, but I hear Dr. Chase mentioned college and some of these universities. We're not in a university area where we have enough money to test every student or students that are on travel team and come back to the group. Filling out a permission form is one thing. They're always, if they don't know that they're asymptomatic, they're going to say no. Everything is going to be no. I want to participate, and it's going to be no. So if we do not know if they're asymptomatic or if they're tested or whatever the case might be, this is what I talked about before, being able to test. That's what, these groups or these schools do in a bubble. We're not in a bubble. And so what I don't want, and I've heard it from teachers before when they wanted to go virtual. They were hard on virtual, right? Not one life is not sufficient. Not one life. So that's what my thought process is there. I understand kids want to run around and they want to be part of a team, and there's opportunity. If somebody tells me to jump off of a bridge, I am not going to follow them. So north and south doing what they're doing, then that's fine. We will do it when we're ready. And so I'm just one vote. But right now, I'm not convinced.
I just have to say that many of the kids who have been asymptomatic, who've developed the myocarditis, which is inflammation of the heart, and many of those athletes had no symptoms. We have no mechanism for testing, but at college, just like Ms. Young said, we don't really have the means to test our kids the way that the college athletes and the professional athletes are being tested. Playing and getting myocarditis could end their career. It could exclude them from a future scholarship. It could be a much more life-altering situation. I am concerned about their welfare, and I just am not certain that this is the time to add these things.
Ms. Healy.
I just wanted to make a comment. Of course, we're all concerned. That's why we have virtual, essentially. But I think this is a community issue at this point. And I think our parents, at least the ones that have communicated to me, would like this opportunity for their students. And it's not to play to get a scholarship. It's that interaction with Dr. Kisner has mentioned. We want to get back to, well, I'll call it the new normal. And I think this may be a way to start that journey. But I would like to have more specifics and preferably, in a format that could be, put with the agenda and open to the public for comment. And I would ask Mrs. Hazard if we could put our agenda on the website on Thursday for the next meeting, if that's possible. We used to do it on Thursdays, and now we've gotten to Fridays, and now it's getting really late on Fridays. So, if your weekends are full, you don't have time to look at it. But I would like to hear from the from the parents as well, because this it will be a risk. It's a risk every time we walk out the door. But it would be something that the parents would be making the decision, other than the students who are already 18. So I appreciate you bringing this forward, and I appreciate all the work that you've clearly put into this, you and the people on your staff. There's a lot of thought. My only request is that we get some more information on this transportation, because I don't want to leave out a large element of the student body just because they don't have, their own transportation, or they don't have a parent available, to bring them to school. So I'm looking forward to this coming back, and I would request that we take action on it, one way or the other at the next meeting. Thank you.
Can I ask for something? Tom, can we see at the next meeting a copy of whatever's going to be given to the student as well as the parent? And also, can we see my visual self here? I asked this when we were trying to do the hybrid thing. Can we see what a schedule would look like for a 4 to 6 practice of time and space and things like that? If we could see something of that nature of what a coach would put out to do, that would be great.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, any other requests? All right, hearing none, going on to budget priorities. I know this is going to be something that FAB is going to be tackling. I've already given my comments, so for once I don't have to, given just some broad areas. But are there any, actually, I guess, Dr. Warner, I'll let you take that, but I was just going to facilitate making sure that there are certain areas, reviewing last year's budget priorities, and then, of course, reviewing where we are in time. But then I'll certainly defer to you.
Well, certainly that this is going to be a unique year for trying to develop a budget and for even establishing priorities. But I think that one of the key things that we have to do is we have to work on the teacher compression scale, and we have to get our salaries up so that we're competitive. I think it puts us at a huge disadvantage. I think other priorities, we are clearly going to have to invest in technology as a supplement to whatever we're doing, because COVID may end it hopefully soon, but I'm sure that at some point that technology may have to be used again. I think that we are on track with the budget development calendar. Like I said, on the 15th, we will be meeting with the PTAs. There's going to be a lot on the agenda for the 22nd, because we will also be holding a public hearing on our budget priorities. And I would appreciate if anybody would get items to the FAB for the meeting on Monday. And we'll be discussing those items. I'm relatively new to this, so it's going to be an interesting year.
Are there any other comments? I guess my only other one is always going to be to Dr. Kisner and to your staff of priority positions based on where we are now or what we anticipate coming up. So that would be probably my only other addition. Is there something it's, I don't know if I want to say hopeful. I'm hoping that the General Assembly next year does not come up with a lot of requirements unless they're going to fund them.
Yeah, just so, I know Ms. Randall and Dr. Warner know this, so, I present a budget to you guys. And so, and I bring it up is because I sit here and I don't really comment on it because my responsibility is to present you a budget that I feel is in the best interest of moving the school system forward. And so far, the last couple of years, it's been completely aligned. Matter of fact, if I've done anything wrong, I haven't put enough in because you guys add. But I do want to remind you about the salaries. Our staff basically got no salary increase. Okay? They got no salary increase. So I'm very appreciative that you guys are seeing this as a priority. But I also would remind that, and I don't say this argumentatively, I say this respectfully, that, I want to say across the street, but we're in their building, they made a very strong point to give raises so they could compete with Northern Virginia. And I think if we've learned anything so far this year is how hard and great our people are. So, I could tell you that right now that you'll see that as a huge focus of my putting a budget together and presenting it to the school board. So anyway, I just want to thank you for having that statement as your first statement because we're going to be total aligned.
And we are below standard,
But our people are way above standard.
Our people, that's right.
I just, because everybody knows this up here, but a lot of times the public is not aware of this. Miss Young and I actually get along very well and are good friends. So I already know I've gotten some texts from people like, why is she so disrespectful to you? She's not disrespectful. She's Miss Young and I'm Mr. Kisner. So, and we play out this routine at school board meetings. So I just, please stop texting me. Everything is fine.
Well, excuse me,
Let them know what Laurie
Is he
thinks of
reading
me.
his phone?
Just a minute. So, just for the school board, remember, next week on the 15th, we will be having our PTO discussion, Colonial Forge High School, is that correct, Ms. Hall? All right, and then our next school board meeting will be on September 22nd. So we will adjourn the main part of the meeting, and then we will move into closed session. I see that Ms. Hollerback has stepped out, so I need to find the,
What you need? What you need?
I need the read-in for,
Where is it?
Madam Chairman, I have it if you'd
I
like.
moved
me to
you have
her-
it, Ms. Healy?
Ms. Healy will read it.
She's got it.
Scroll up. Oh, if I can get this, I'm on the right
Can we let the
page.
staff go, Dr. Kisner?
Yes, everybody's going to be able to go.
Okay.
Well, I have the last three lines. I think my computer's frozen. Oh, here it is.
If you could read
Um,
1301.
where-
Yep,
Oh, no, this is the closeout. Okay, I can bring us out.
1301.
Yeah, that's what I got. This is the certification where we have convened a closed meeting. It's in
Yeah.
1301.
It's the, I move that the Stafford School Board of Stafford County convene in a closed meeting pursuant to Section 2.2, 3711A1 of the Code of Virginia to discuss and or consider the superintendent and board clerk's annual performance evaluation.
is
Can you all
bizarre.
second that?
Second.
All right, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We are in closed session. Thank you.